for Black people, everybody, all people to know about what happened and what America's past holds besides like Independence Day. And so I think that's really important. So when I came into space, I was immediately inspired, and as an artist myself, I realized this as I get older, that I really move off of inspiration, and I was inspired to do something in the space. And I was like, yo, this space is sick. Like, I just wanted to sit here and like just kick it here. We had a meeting, and I was like, yo, how can I help? How can I help bring people into the space? How many people have never been to the space? Never. Wow. So this is amazing that this is the case. I love that, and that is the goal of all of these events, is really to get people that have never been in the space in the space. Because, you know, we always go to Center for Civil and Human Rights, the Martin Luther King Center, et cetera, et cetera. But like, this is a space that we need to be. And this is a space that has great energy and so many artifacts and good music. So, what do you mean? And drinks. So they have this. So I want to thank you all for allowing us to. I want to thank you, Reese, for hosting us in your space. Thank you so much. And this space is not just cool to look at. It actually holds really deep significance to Atlanta and with the Black diaspora. Really, this space is WERD Studios, Word Studios. It is the first Black-owned radio station in North America. Dr. Martin Luther King's office, keep me honest, was right over here. And when he wanted to broadcast to the Black people in Atlanta, he would come in this space and he would hit he would knock on the wall. That's the Lord. Okay, don't take that. But he would let them know, and he would come into space, and this is where he would broadcast his messages to get to everyone. And so that to me was enough to like say, okay, people need to come here. Black people in Atlanta, white people in Atlanta, Asian people in Atlanta, Hispanic people in Atlanta. Every person in Atlanta needs to know about the history of Atlanta, because I've lived a lot of places, and to be an Atlantan is there's something special about us that we hold, and we should continue to keep that. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Reese tell you a little bit about the space, and then I also, before I would be remiss if I didn't thank Luano at Sweet Auburn Works for helping us make this possible. So thank you so much. They're an organization that's dedicated to preserving this space, this corridor, this history, and we're happy to partner with them. We hope to partner with other people and make this even bigger and even better. But for me, it's something special about bringing people into this space. So I don't want to take it away and put it at a theater or anywhere else. I want to do it here. So Reese, yeah, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank everyone for being here. My name is Reese. I'm the curator and artistic director of this beautiful space. It's an original, the space here. I want to make two corrections, but I love where he was going with the story. One, it's not my space. This space belongs to the culture. So if we don't keep it, it won't be here. I'm the gatekeeper. I keep the vinyl clean. I keep the music going, but this belongs to the culture. When I say culture, I'm not talking about any specific skin tone. I'm talking about the culture. It's a magnificent feeling for me to stand here and see what America is really like, not what we are told or what's flashed on the TV screen. This is America right here, this kind of vibe. That being said, this is an original Madam C.J. Walker beauty shop from the 1940s. Artifacts right behind this young lady right here on the antique sofa. You can see those little beauty tools. They were left in this space by the Walker agents that used to work here. When I stumbled onto those tools, I recognized I had to preserve this. So actually, you're sitting in my salon. So the legacy of Madam C.J. Walker still lives. 2 years into the lease, a Black woman comes to the door because this was Wheat Street Garden Apartments. Black lady came to the door. I'm doing hair. She just stuck her head in. I have no idea why she would just come over here. She just poked her head in and said, "Mr. Reese, did you know the first Black radio station in North America was actually upstairs over this beauty shop? And when I was a little girl, I could hear the music from WERD spilling onto the streets." I completely lost it. I think Arletta was either with me or came in that week as one of our client and what do you call it, board member. We have two of them, Francine and Arletta. So I told Arletta what I had learned, and I was both excited about learning this legacy, but simultaneously I was enraged. Who didn't put a note on the wall saying we were here? How do you dare not celebrate a legacy like that? So for 19 years, with the help of my board, I've been preserving this legacy to pass it on to the next generation and the generations after that. So that's going in this direction. Well, simultaneously, I take the music to senior facilities like A.G. Rose, where Arletta's mother used to live. She passed away. And we would spin music for the seniors because they grew up with WERD. So it was a twofold effort. A client recognized my preservation work. One of Arletta's friends, her father passed away and donated the Great Wall of Vinyl. Music from the 1920s straight through the 1980s. So
by the way, I said, when I was talking to Reese as we were preparing for this, I had already asked Dr. Chalonor, who you'll hear from in just a moment, who some of her favorite artists were. And she says Nancy Wilson, Teddy Pendergrass, and there was one more.
Barbara Streisand.
Barbara Streisand. And I talked to Reese and I said, do you have these people? He said, are you crazy? That's all these people. So like, she has everyone up there.
So since we've been preserving this, in the past few weeks, a lot has happened to thrust us further in the stratosphere. And I'm grateful for every effort. For one, I get a phone call from a representative from the, what is it? Help me out on that. No, not Georgia State, the Dome really tells us. The legislators. Yeah, they gave me a proclamation last week for the preservation work. Well, there's a documentary out called Sweet Auburn Blues. I don't know if anyone in here has seen it, but for those who haven't seen it, on the 28th, back at the Beltline Center will be another screening, and we would love your support for that. It's a Georgia State graduate that did a documentary on Auburn Avenue, second to none, and we are a primary part of that particular documentary. So we've got that going. This building is now a National Historic Landmark. We're sort of under the umbrella. The Parks Department is going to reopen the King Center. We're a nonprofit. You can find us on social media at WERD Studio 54 or Facebook Matter Museum. And we're a donation-based museum, and the donations help keep the music flowing in the senior facilities, and it keeps me in a position to introduce young people to the Cab Callaways, who are the really, and Louis Armstrong, who's really the beginning of, what is that, hip hop? Started in 1930. So we make that generational connection without browbeating. Just through listening to the music, you can hear the different beats, and when the music starts to, sort of change. So this is what we do at WBN.
And this space is available for rental.
Thank you. Arletta's always here to help me.
We've had book signings here. We've had birthday parties. We've just had gatherings. So
that's what I mean when I say it's not my space. If you want to have an event, it's doable. We just ask for a small donation. You can bring your party here and enjoy this incredible atmosphere. And either I will spend or my son will spend for the event.
And I'd like to add that we are a 501c3.
We're a nonprofit.
Nonprofit. We are allowed to, as part of that, we can do fundraising, but we need minds who have ideas
and young energy
to assist, because we know how to write them, but we need help.
So since WERD was established in 1949 and sold in 1968, so yours truly, my radio handle is the Acoustical Dandy. I brought the radio station back via the internet with an all vintage, all vinyl, all the time format. I'm on every Wednesday and Thursday from 3 to 5 or either 2 to 4. They keep switching me. This is pretty much what we do, preserve the legacy of the music and move this historical agenda forward, because this place needs to be here for another 20 years and beyond, with or without me. Fortunately, my son has taken an interest in continuing on this legacy, but it's a community space, and it's going to take community support. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Our speaker today is Dr. Herscehelle Chalonor. Chalonor. My apologies, Chalonor. We're so excited to host her this evening. We have a few notables in the audience, but we'll go ahead and get right to it. So, does everyone have something to drink? Okay, good. Great. So want to make sure that happens. So everyone found out about WRD. How many people got a chance to read Dr. Chalonor's bio? You just read it? Okay. So, I mean, beautifully intimidating is like what I would say. So also, I cannot continue this interview without thanking my parents, my mom particularly, because she knows Dr. Chalonor is my parents' neighbor. So that's how we even got her. Thank you so much, Mom. I appreciate it. Oh, my mom's right there. Yeah, Mom right there. Yeah. So my mom's just all around dope person, and my dad's up there. Yeah, he's great. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things. What I'm gonna do is read I'm gonna read the bio, and I want everyone to really like listen to this. There's a long bio that I'm just like wow, and then there is an abbreviated one. I'll read you all the abbreviated one, and it's still like so impressive. And Dr. Chalonor keep me honest as well, which I have grown a love for her honesty. She keeps me honest and will tell you exactly how she's feeling, even though we've only known each other pretty recently. I would like to like hang out again if that's cool. So Dr. Herscehelle Chalonor was a Spelman College student during the Atlanta student movement of 1960 and 61. She, along with Morehouse student Lonnie King, who recently passed away yesterday. So this conversation was even more poignant. I went to go look up information about Mr. King, and I realized that he passed away yesterday. Yeah, so it was all on the news. So Dr. Chalonor, this is a really sensitive time just in general, and for the Black community in general in Atlanta, but also for people that were close to him. So we want to be respectful of that. And as co-chair of the Committee on Appeal for Human Rights, Herschelle led students in staging sit-ins at popular stores and iconic locations throughout the city of Atlanta. I learned that there were 16 places that these sit-ins happened. A lot of people are familiar with the sit-in at Rich's that happened, but they happened all over the city. And Dr. Chalonor was a large part of making that happen. After graduation, she continued her studies and earned a PhD from Columbia University. Simple. Dr. Sullivan Chalonor has held a number of leadership roles in nonprofit work, including program officer for the Diversity Education and Research Ford Foundation, a director of UNESCO, which is the United Nations Educational Science and Cultural Organization, Washington Liaison Office, and a dean of Clark Atlanta University School of Public and International Affairs. And I'm sure if you all ever just Google her name, you'll see like Stanford wrote something on her, and like there are all these different institutions and organizations that have written something about her and done kind of video interviews about her. And so you can get the litany of accolades that she has from there. But without further ado, this is Dr. Chalonor. Hello. And really quickly, I see a lot of people are doing social media. If you'd like to put this on social media, hashtag Sweet Auburn Stories. That way we can track it. Tell your friends. The name of the company is Roycebee Creative. The Instagram is roycebee.co, spelled out. And we're going to play a game because I don't like formalities and I just want to play a game. So we'll play a game. And the game is called Wordplay. So this is the game. I thought this was clever because obviously, right? So I thought it was clever. Thank you. So Wordplay is the game that we're gonna play. And Dr. Chalonor, all I'm gonna do is put up a word and you just tell me the first thing that you think of. It can be long, it can be short, it can be whatever. If you say stupid or I don't know or whatever, you hate me. But that's the name of the game, Wordplay. Okay, so, race.
An enduring and growing problem in the United States. We thought we had done something about it, but we haven't.
Okay. Spelman.
My alma mater.
Yeah. And, oh yes. Any other Spelman grads in here? I went to Howard, so HBCU love all the way. But you know what I'm saying? FAMU, we got FAMU in the house. Do we have any Morehouse Tuskegee? All right, we got Morehouse. Of course, we got Morehouse in the house.
Livingstone College.
Perfect, Livingstone College. That's good. I like that. HBCU love. Okay. Peace.
What we don't have enough of, and I think, unfortunately, our current president is making it more difficult to maintain peace around the world and to contribute constructively to human understanding.
Yeah. Kindness.
Not enough of that around either.
That's true.
Well, I think that is one of the easiest things that people can do for each other.
I agree.
And we don't do enough of it. And it doesn't take any money, and you usually get paid back.
Yeah.
But you have to pay forward.
Yeah, I agree. I'd also like to say that Dr. Challenor is a very well-traveled young woman. She actually spent time in Paris. She's actually spent, I'm a world traveler, so I immediately connected with her over her time abroad. And kindness is something that I have experienced a lot when I'm traveling, so that's why I just decided to write it. Nancy Wilson.
One of the greatest singers there is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Atlanta.
Home.
Home. Facebook.
You know, I've avoided Facebook. I don't know enough about it. I think it's dangerous. And that shows you what generation I'm in.
No, I mean,
I do not have a Facebook page.
Okay.
Purposefully.
So, yeah. Do we all have Facebook pages in here? Are there people who are like anti-Facebook? That's the thing, anti-Facebook. You're anti-Facebook. Totally. I'm kind of anti now. Is right? Is your Facebook anti-Facebook? That's interesting. All right. Newberry.
Well, Newberry is a place where I sat in during the civil rights demonstrations and sit-ins of October 19th, 1960.
And what was it?
Oh, the store itself?
Mm-hmm.
It was like a 5 and 10.
Yeah.
Lonnie King. No, excuse me, please. Please join me in a moment of silence for the leader of the civil rights movement in Atlanta. He was an extraordinary man, and I had the pleasure of joining him with 2 other people active in the civil rights movement on Friday to go visit him at the hospice where he was staying. And of course, as Royce indicated, he died yesterday morning. He led the civil rights movement in Atlanta, from January of 1960 to about 64. He went to Howard University.
Yeah, of course he did. Look
Law
at
school.
Lonnie.
He didn't finish. And he came back to Atlanta, and he's a remarkable man. And that tells me something.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Okay. Make America Great Again.
I'm sorry, I don't like Donald Trump. I'll be very frank with you. I think he's dishonest, unlettered, and unkind. But obviously, that's his slogan. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to participate if we're going to make America great again. So we all have a responsibility to make that happen.
Yeah. All right. Paris.
One of the most extraordinary cities in the world.
Yeah.
I had the fortune to spend a year studying at the Sorbonne and in another part of France, near the Alps in the summer. And then the organization that I worked for 14 years, UNESCO, is based in Paris. It's one of the United Nations agencies. And UNESCO stands for United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organizations. But unfortunately, it too has been subjected to terrorism.
Paris or
Oh,
UNESCO?
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paris.
Yeah. Kim Kardashian.
I've read about the distinguished woman. I know she likes to get her picture taken.
She does.
But I confess, I haven't spent much time learning much about her.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. And 1960.
Was a critical year in the history of the United States, especially in terms of civil rights.
Yeah.
As you know, it didn't start in Atlanta. Atlanta was one of the 5th states, really, where you had an active civil rights movement. It began in February in North Carolina. And it was one of the most challenging and yet satisfying movement that I've ever had the opportunity to play a part in.
Yeah.
I'll tell you more about it later. And Lonnie was the head and will always be remembered as the leader of the Atlanta student movement.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a perfect segue into my first question. So, Lonnie King, are we familiar with Lonnie King at all? Is that someone? So, I had heard Lonnie King's name, but I didn't know his super significance until I started preparing for this interview. You know, and one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because like we hear the same names all the time, but Lonnie King is a super, super influential and important gentleman. And so he was the leader of the Atlanta student movement. So, you know, you had the NAACP, which was, they were older and they were more senior and not old necessarily, but adults. And they were kind of participating in the civil rights movement on their own. And then you have people like Dr. Challenor and Lonnie King, who are students that are younger than most of us, who are really being super, super change makers amongst their own communities. And so, yes, please. I won't do it.
You know, it's important to remember that there were, I think, about 5 major civil rights organizations during that time. King's organization was SCLC. We used to call it SLIC. We being all of the student movements. And as you know, it started, I think it was in North Carolina in February the 2nd. 2 male students demonstrated, and that unleashed the first revolution that was televised. And the fact that there was television certainly facilitated the movement. It was a pivotal time in United States history. And Lonnie, as I said, was the chair. You probably heard the name of Julian Bond.
Yeah.
He went to the drugstore, no longer exists, but the drugstore, and spoke first to Julian Bond about why don't we try to do something like that in Atlanta. I was studying in Paris at the time, at the Sorbonne, so I was not here when the movement started. The first demonstration occurred in March of 1960, and about 77 students were arrested. But they were released on their own recognizance. No one stayed in jail during that first arrest. The other remarkable thing about it, I guess most of you know, we had at that time 5 historically black colleges and universities in Atlanta. You had Spelman College for women, Morehouse College for men, Clark College, again, undergraduate, male and female. You had Atlanta University and the ITC, Interdenominational Theological Seminary. Clark College and Atlanta University combined, I think in 88, I should remember, to form Clark Atlanta University. So But then you had the Morehouse Medical School to come subsequently, so there's still 5. Morris Brown, as you know, I hope no one here is a supporter of that school, I shouldn't say that, is in very serious difficulty and has been for some time. And I think a lot of us think that it should sell or give over its land to some of the other historically black colleges here in Atlanta and let them carry on their right. I won't say this because I'm being recorded.
Feel free. It's a safe space.
No, because I don't know what's going to happen to this.
Got it.
But anyway, they're struggling again, and I think they're trying to get a new president.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I raise this because what was fascinating about what happened in Atlanta is that all of the students cooperated together.
Right.
Institutional linkages were really not at all important. What was important was to get on the picket line, participate in the strike, decide if you're going to sit in, and students had the right to say, I'll go to jail or I won't go to jail. The first major sit-in when we went to jail was in October of 1960. And we sat in at least 16 department stores. You had 2 major department stores here, Rich's and Davidson's. Macy's, of course, wasn't here at that time. And then 5 and dime stores, but they were key stores where African Americans could buy, but they couldn't sit down and have a drink of anything. I demonstrated at Newberry. Lonnie made sure that he and Martin Luther King Jr. went to Rich's, which was the largest store. Lonnie and I had a discussion about this. We called Reverend King ML. He called ML and he said, Herschelle, since you're a woman, you need to ask him if he'll demonstrate with us. He might do it more easily if you ask him. And he agreed to come. But to his credit, and to the credit of his organization, Reverend King never tried to interfere with what the students were doing, to set limits or targets for what we should do. And he focused mainly on the southern part of Georgia and the rest of the South.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the students that really brought about the desegregation.
Yeah. How did you and Lonnie King even get connected? Because you're in Paris. This is how, you're studying, and Lonnie's here. Like, who was someone like, hey, Herschelle, meet Lonnie, bye? Or how did that happen?
No. When I came back, I went to study abroad in what would have been my senior year.
Right.
But according to the provisions of the grant, this was Charles Merrill, the financier who provided this money to Spelman and Morehouse.
Merrill Lynch, if anybody's ever heard of that bank.
Lynch, Pierce, Fenner, and and at one point he was on the board at Spelman College. And so I knew about the movement because I was in contact with my fellow students.
Right.
When I came back, while I was still in France, they elected me president of the student body in absentia. And so in that capacity, when I came back, I would have been the natural person for Lonnie to contact, the president of the student body.
So you were in France and they elected you president?
Of the student body for the coming year.
Right.
Wow.
Yes.
How did you campaign?
It's a lot easier than it is.
Yeah, I mean, were you like, this is what I want to do?
I didn't campaign at all. I
really?
was shocked.
Yeah. Wow.
I had some loyal friends
Yeah.
who were classmates.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had been president of our class.
Okay.
So they're
like, Herschelle can do it. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
or let her handle it.
Yeah,
But, and so Lonnie came to meet with me, and it was a settled deal.
Right.
And I'll tell you why it was so important to me. I was in France in Paris, rather, at the time when most of the Francophone African countries were gaining their independence.
Right.
Guinea first was in 1968, but the others were all in 1960. There are about 14 of them.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of excitement about that, and I felt very badly because I said, we African Americans will never run a country. Thank God for Obama. So that's why because of what they were doing, I was very excited about the sit-in movement, and my classmates kept me abreast of what was going on. But these were letters. I mean, there were no cell phones. The transatlantic calls were very difficult and expensive for students.
Right.
So it was through letters. So Lonnie approached me, and we did it. I think it's important to note that the whole issue of nonviolence was taken very, very seriously. Anyone who participated in the movement had to go through
the trainings, right?
Training.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where you would be struck and you would.
How many people have ever pledged any organization in like school or whatever? I know some people have, or like gone through anything like that. Like, so there is an exhibit. So at the Center for Civil and Human Rights, they on the first floor they like walk you through all the details of the civil rights movement, and one of the pieces of the exhibit is talking about the training that they had to go through, and it was so intense. And I would love to hear about the training from you firsthand.
Well, first of all, we were encouraged to read Gandhi.
Okay.
Gandhi, as you recall, was born in South Africa.
Yeah.
And then went to India and did what he did, which was extraordinary. But we were encouraged to read Gandhi. And then there were dry runs, students participating in a demonstration and having someone push them.
Yeah.
And then resisting. I remember when I sat in at Newsbury, a white man spat in my face. And I had to grin and bear it.
Yeah.
But Martin, well, we call him MLM Martin. Martin always realized that fundamentally America would change for economic reasons.
Right.
And once students started picketing the stores, people didn't go in them.
Right.
So they lost a lot of money. And amazing to me, Lonnie was telling me how many adults in the African American community turned in their not their credit cards, but their Rich's cards. Their Rich's cards. And so that they certain that they wouldn't buy things at the stores. I've been part of a number of movements and activities and organizations since, but at no point, at least as a student, did we ever think, well, how can we do this? We have to raise money first. We didn't, and people used to always talk about, you put your body in the movement.
Right.
I know it must be hard for many people to understand, but at that time, at least at Spelman College, if you were a freshman or a sophomore, you were not supposed to be off campus after about 6 o'clock. If you had a boyfriend, there were visiting hours, and they could come in this large room and sit and talk. But that's it, buddy. There was only one restaurant.
That's how we do it now. That's how we do it now. Everybody just comes and we're like, okay, like talk.
Well, no, but you cell phones and Facebook, like contact, and computers. But when I was at Spelman, there was only one drugstore we could go to on what is now the Student Movement Drive, that street that goes up and passes Morehouse College. Is it Brawley? No, Brawley's across street. Fair, voila, yes, Fair Street. Okay.
And Spelman students could only go to this. This is you all were restricted from going to the other stores, or it was
They
just the
wouldn't let us
closest?
in.
Oh, they wouldn't let you. Okay, okay.
When, we had to wear stockings, we couldn't wear slacks on campus, and so stockings rip, and so we'd have to buy them. We
Right.
would walk to West End. I don't know if you know where West End is.
Mm-hmm.
We have to walk to West End, and you couldn't do that alone.
Right.
So it was highly restricted. There were many campus events
Yeah.
which allowed students to get together, but it was a very, very different environment. When I came back to Atlanta in 1993 to work at Clark Atlanta University, there were places I had never seen before.
Yeah.
And I was born here.
Yeah.
And my mother was a graduate of Spelman. Her sisters were graduates of Spelman. My father was a graduate of Morehouse. He got his master's degree in math from Atlanta University, but he wanted to be an engineer. And of course, they wouldn't let him go to Georgia Tech. And so that's why we moved to Pittsburgh, where he got his engineering degree at Carnegie Tech. So, but it was a very different environment. Now it's easier for students. But I
Yeah.
think because of that, the fact that our college presidents allowed students to participate was
Right.
really quite special. There was a meeting with the student representative from the 5 institutions.
Right.
With the presidents from the 5 institutions
Got
on
it.
Morehouse's campus when
Got it.
Benjamin Mays was president.
Right.
And the president of Atlanta University, his last name was Clemens. I can't remember his first name.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And he said, you can't do this
Right.
unless you explain to the people of Atlanta why you're doing it.
Right.
And that's what led to the appeal on human rights. It was a full page or 2-page ad that was printed in the New York paper that gave the justification for integration. I had hoped that the lady who is credited with doing that could come this evening, but she's not well. She is an Atlantan. Her name is
Rosalind.
Rosalind Pope. Thank you. You tell me. But that was a document that talked about segregation in education and
Yeah,
public
actually.
events. I mean,
Yeah, I wrote some of the points down.
Yeah.
I thought they were really interesting because there were like 7 points that the appeal for human rights actually focused on. One was education, so separate but unequal. Separate and unequal. Jobs, black people are being denied jobs. The third one, and listen to this and then kind of bring it in 2019. Housing. They said very specifically in the document, I wish we could all get a copy, but like I'm definitely going to print a copy of for myself. Blacks make up 32% of the population, but are forced to live in 16% of the city. Voting, we just had a scandal there. Voting, blacks are declared unqualified to vote, or things like voter suppression happened. That just happened in 2019, or what was that, 18? Hospitals, inadequate hospitals for black people. Movies, concerts, and restaurants. So black people were barred from most and then segregated from the rest. So,
and in public transportation, you had to sit at the back of the bus.
yeah.
I remember the first time I went to the theater. What's the big theater downtown?
The Fox
Yeah,
Theater?
the Fox.
Yeah.
It was raining, and of course, we could only sit on the second floor.
Yeah.
And the stairs were outside. So I remember walking upstairs in the rain. I never went back to the Fox Theater.
Right.
Those stairs are still there.
Yeah. Being that it is Women's History Month, I don't know if people know that, but it is Women's History Month. Happy Women's History Month. What were the women's roles in the civil rights movement? Because we hear a lot about men and there are schools named after the men, and that was one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you this time, is because I was like, I want to hear from a woman. Like, what was that like? I mean, you were black, you were young, and you were female.
Well, I'll say a couple things about that. One of the things we were very concerned about,
Yeah.
for those of us who decided we would go to jail and stay in jail, was that we might be raped or attacked in some way by
Right.
the white guards.
Right.
I mean, it's segregated jails. And so the blacks are all in one area, but the guards were white. We were very concerned about that.
Right.
Fortunately, we were put in a cell with other women, African American women, of course, who had been arrested. One of the women who was there was the mother of one of our classmates. She had a husband who was a little aggressive, and she killed him or beat him up or something. Anyway,
She ended up
she
in
fought
jail.
back. She ended up in jail.
Right.
And of course, having her there helped.
I'm sure.
But
I mean,
we organized. I mean, we set it up so that we had someone who would stay awake.
yeah.
We would take turns staying awake
Wow.
to watch the rest of the young women who were there.
Right.
And it wasn't very nice. I mean,
Right.
you could only get fresh milk if you were pregnant.
Wow.
Otherwise, you had to have buttermilk. Awful. The food was bad. It was, well,
How long were you in jail?
5 days
5 days.
that time.
Yeah.
And then, and this gets into politics because
Right.
this is when John F. Kennedy was running for elections. And they wanted the Negro vote.
Right.
And they thought, well, a good way to get it
Right.
is to try to get the mayor of Atlanta
Right.
to encourage the students who were arrested
Yeah.
to get them released.
Uh-huh.
And so that was an important element. I won't say a factor, but what is an element during the course of our incarceration?
I have a quick question on that.
Sure.
Did jail ever come up on your record? Like,
Oh,
were you ever doing
absolutely.
anything else and you were like, I was a part of the civil rights movement?
Oh, yes. I worked for, part of the State Department. It was
Right.
The UNDP, the United Nations Development Program.
Yeah.
It's our foreign aid program.
Right.
The United States Foreign Aid Program. And I worked for in one of their missions in West Africa, in Guinea. And I had to have a security clearance.
Right.
You're reading all this, hearing all this about security clearance
Right,
and what
right,
the president
right.
is doing and his daughter and
Right.
his son-in-law. Anyway, so I had to have a security clearance. And of course, they asked me, what were you doing in jail? And I told him. And he said, well, why don't you have that taken off your record? I said, because I'm proud of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was tough.
Yeah.
I mean, it was tough. There were cement floors. I think we slept on pallets. We didn't have beds.
Yeah.
What kept us going, I think, was singing songs,
Yeah.
mainly spiritual, religious songs. That's what kept, I think, people going.
Yeah.
You must remember that some of the young women who were there might have been as young as 16.
Right.
So it was a scary thing. And as
Right.
you know, in the South, women are very protected.
Right.
But there were no misadventures.
Yeah.
I mean, it turned out well. But as I had said earlier, it was during the election, and the Kennedys wanted the black vote, and
Yeah.
so they approached the mayor, and the mayor released the students. And no, that's not. It's more complicated than that. Someone spoke to the mayor, and then you've probably heard of Reverend. Oh God, what is his name? Who's a Morehouse? Is there a Morehouse man here?
There is Quizm. Oh, we got a couple. Yeah.
Oh God, what is his name? He's a minister, and he graduated from ITC, the International Theological Seminary.
Reverend Orange?
No. Tall, slender. His son is Otis Moss. Thank you. Otis Moss. While Lonnie was in jail, Otis was out of jail. Otis was doing his graduate work then. And he's a very calm, serious man, and he speaks very slowly and with a drift, and he's amazing.
Yeah.
And so they contacted Otis because Otis was in charge while Lonnie was in jail.
Right.
And
who was making these decisions? Were they just? I mean, like, who was there? Like an executive board that was?
we had an executive
Yeah,
board,
okay,
but
okay.
it was consensus with respect to the executive committee.
Got it.
And the committee had representatives from each of the 5
Got it. Okay.
schools.
Okay.
But anyway, we were released because we were told that they were going to have a meeting with the students to try
Right.
to work out some arrangement.
Right.
There was a group of African American leaders because,
Yeah.
as you know, we had a lot of African American businessmen in
Yeah.
Atlanta. And they had what they call the senior liaison committee that worked with us.
Okay.
And so obviously they wanted to sit in on
Yeah.
these negotiations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was them, the ministers, the white downtown businessmen,
Right.
politicians, and
Right.
then Lonnie and myself just representing the student body.
Wow.
So they agreed to make some concessions, but they weren't serious. So we went back to jail in February, but that was for a shorter period of time. Then we came up with an agreement that
Right.
would lead to desegregation in the fall.
Wow.
And I think the issue was the politicians didn't want to think that they conceded to the student movement,
Right.
but rather followed the law.
Right. The federal
Brown-
with the
yes,
yeah.
Brown-
Okay. Right.
yes. And she just died not long ago. The lady who was the person in the Brown versus
Yeah.
USA. But it was perhaps the most important movement that I've been involved in.
What are some others that you've been involved in? I know it's probably, you can probably go down the list. I'm
Well,
curious.
when I went back to Washington, one school you didn't mention, I got my master's from Johns Hopkins School
did
of
not
Advanced
mention that.
International Studies, which is part of Johns Hopkins University, but it's in Washington, D.C. And at SAIS, there was one other student, an African-American male. So we were about 50 students. It was a very small
Mm-hmm.
program then. And I think, and I went there
Johns Hopkins.
63. Yeah, you don't have it on there. But it was before I went for my PhD. But there had only been about 2 other African Americans who had attended Hopkins, and no African American female.
Mm-hmm.
So it was tough. It was hard to find lodging.
Right.
And there was a white student who was a year ahead of me, and she talked to their landlord
Right.
and helped get me in the apartment.
Right.
So she and I shared an apartment.
Just the lengths you had to go through
Oh, yeah.
to even get just.
I stayed in the black
apartment.
community for a while, but I didn't have a car. And
Right.
transportation was horrendous.
Right.
And I confessed to my neighbor here that I'd never been on the MARTA. Of course, the MARTA didn't exist then. You didn't
Right.
have that kind
Right.
of transportation. So I wanted to get closer to the school. And
Yeah.
this apartment building was just across from the school. But I would encourage all of you, if you have students or if you like to travel, study abroad.
Mm-hmm.
Get out. I mean, it is the most. It's one of the most compelling things I think you can do.
Yeah.
And I think I came back feeling more American
100%. Yeah.
than I was when I went. I
Yeah.
mean, you realize how unique you are.
Yeah.
Paris then was just exceptional. Students, there were several student restaurants, and you had a student ticket, then you got cheaper food. I mean, not cheaper food, but I mean it would cost you less to have your lunch.
Yeah.
You got a lower rate to get into the movies and the theater. And
Yeah, yeah.
The theater was just magnificent in France.
Was this your first time ever going abroad? Was this study abroad in Paris?
Yes.
Okay.
It was
And
the
so
first
you
time.
literally left from Atlanta in 1959, or was it in 1960?
It would have been 59.
In 59.
60.
And so you leave from Atlanta, you're studying at Spelman, you go to Paris, right?
By myself.
By yourself. And I travel alone. I like traveling alone. But I also don't live in 1960.
Right.
And I have a cell phone and everything else. Like, what was that like?
Different.
Yeah.
I arrived in Paris on Bastille Day, which is like
Yeah. Independence Day almost,
Independence
right?
Day. Not almost, is.
Yeah.
Yes. And I had to try to get a train to go to the south to, oh God, I can't think of the city to come to me, where I stayed with a French family
Marseille.
and went to summer school. And there was an Italian lady there and 2 or 3 other foreign students who stayed with this
Yeah.
couple. The husband had fought in the war and he had been injured, and the lady did all the work, which
Right.
is typical.
Right.
But I remember we were having dinner and I had eaten enough and I was trying to speak French and I said, "Je suis plein."
Oh, she
I am
speaks French
full.
fluently. We talked about this.
And
Okay.
everybody started laughing because when you say plein, it means that you're pregnant. And I didn't know that. But I mean, there were many kinds of events like that, but people were so kind
Yeah.
and so very helpful. And I think for those of you here who are African Americans, I mean, African Americans were treated very well then in France. The French are different. You know, if you can speak French, they love you.
Yeah.
I don't care what color you are.
Right.
You can speak French, you're
Right.
fine. But they had difficulty with Muslims.
Yeah.
And so we were treated as interesting oddities, different people, and
Yeah.
so on and so on, and not discriminated against. In some places we were given advantages.
Right.
But some of the students who came from Muslim countries had a rough time.
That's extremely interesting to me. Like I said, as a traveler, and I guess like organizing without social media. So like, again, how? I could just ask these questions: isn't how, what, and who? Like, how
Well,
did you do that?
Towards the last, let's say from February
Yeah.
through the end of the academic year in 1961,
Right.
we had walkie-talkies.
Oh.
Oh yeah, we were the only ones that had walkie-talkies.
Oh.
And so
So y'all were like,
that's right.
Herschelle, you up?
The other thing is our headquarters was in a local church.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the community, we had not lots, but several cab drivers who would take the students downtown.
Right.
The black community was extraordinarily supportive.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them, as I said, turned over their riches cards and
Yeah.
stopped shopping, and the economic pain made the difference.
Yeah. I think.
And I remember getting into an elevator
Yeah.
someplace, and this elderly white woman came up to me and she said, "I'm so sorry for what has happened to you, and keep going. You know, you have people who support you."
Oh wow.
It was an illuminating time.
Yeah.
But I cannot tell you how saddened I am by the things that we hear from our leadership today,
Yeah.
because it heightens ethnic thinking, ethnic division,
Yeah.
mistreatment of women.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah. It was really interesting when I was traveling abroad. So I spent time in Southeast Asia. And when I was traveling abroad, it was when Barack Obama was president. People would always stop me and go, "You know Barack Obama?" And I would always say, "Yes, obviously," because this is what you do. I mean, and
Just
that,
had
like,
dinner with him
yeah,
last
yeah, right. And my last question is this: you've lived an incredible life. filled with.
Over.
Yeah, we were gonna keep it. You can continue talking and everyone, but I do want to.
No, I mean my life is not
Oh
over.
no, no, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. It is definitely not. But you have lived an incredible life, and it's been filled with such bold occurrences. What would you say is your life's work?
I would give everything I own
Yeah.
to get rid of racial disparities.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the most difficult things that we accomplish. One of the problems, because obviously we've written a number of speeches about civil rights movement.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about political activism,
Yeah.
but we didn't talk enough about our accumulation of economic wealth.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's nice to have these places to go to and eat, but
Yeah.
if you're not earning the salary, you can't do it. And so the kind of disparities you still have
Yeah.
in terms of the kinds of income and jobs that African Americans can get. And of course, now, the one thing that our president has done has kind of made African Americans superfluous, because now it's the Latinos who, you know, are the group that it's being talked about. Latinos and people of the Muslim faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very disappointing time in America.
Yeah.
I can't tell you. And, you know, you think, and of course with Lonnie's death, there are a lot of people around who worked with him, and
You said you left her.
we worked so hard, and
Yeah.
we thought we had made headway,
Yeah.
and then
This. Yeah.
Trump comes in, and
Yeah.
it's just unfortunate.
Yeah. I can imagine that's probably so hard to see. You know, and there are a few facts that I was remiss in mentioning. So 1619 is very significant because that's when the slave trade started here in America. We're at the 400th year this year. I want everybody to know that because it's super important that we know. We're in 2019 and it's a significant year. So ask yourself, what are you doing to remember that? What are you doing to recognize that? And yeah, just keep that in the forefront of your brain. Also, Dr. Challenor comes from an extremely accomplished family. Her mother and father went to Spelman and Morehouse, also had graduate degrees. Her sister has her doctorate in cytogenetics. Cytogenetics. What is that? And she has
Studies blood.
Yeah, she studies blood. They're both doctors. Like, this is incredible.
PhD.
PhDs. PhDs. Right. PhDs. And also she was born at Grady. So like that's just very important to know. Your blood is here in Atlanta.
I'm a Grady baby.
You are a Grady baby, and we love you for that. We appreciate you, and thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today.
Well,
Yeah.
except I wish there had been some questions. From
Yeah,
the
we have. So we did ask, so the formal interview's over, but we did ask a couple people to say if they had questions. So Jadon Ogletree had a question, and I'm just going to read it here. First off, I want to say that I'm honored. This is Jadon. Where's Jadon? Oh, Jadon's right here.
Oh.
You want to read it? It
Yeah,
feels
let me
weird with me
read
reading it.
Okay. First off, I want to say that I'm honored to be in your presence as an African American woman myself. I thank you for setting such a wonderful example of what it looks like to stand up for what we believe in and not be afraid of the consequences. I feel that in that day and time, it took a lot of strength and courage. So thank you. My question is this: what was your first personal moment or experience that you realized things were changing in terms of equality for blacks and experiencing a true act of love from one of a different ethnicity that was considered to be part of the majority.
You know, what happened as a result of the sit-in movement is that, as it happened all across the South, the number of fellowships that were made available to peoples of color, so that presented opportunities for students, more students to go to college, and entry into, you know, those muckety-muck institutions like Harvard and Yale and you know them. So that I guess was very important to me.
Yeah. And then we have one more. Is Otto Wilson here? Oh, perfect. Oh, yeah. Perfect. This is George.
My neighbor.
Yes.
So what would your advice be to facing those that are graduating soon now, since they live in America as today, when you lived in America as in, and I'll frame it as in yesterday, what advice would you give those that are coming across the stage now?
Don't waste time. You know, what surprises me now is that I've been on college campuses visiting or for other reasons, and I see these students with their earbuds, and then they've got the phone, and they're not paying attention to the world around them. And I think, I get the impression, I don't have children. My husband and I were divorced before we had children. So I don't have any children, but I do have grandnieces and nephews. And it's these electronic things that they spend so much time with without talking to people and getting outside and traveling. And for heaven's sakes, learn another language. You know, you go to Europe and the distances between countries are so much smaller, and they start learning languages at an earlier age, but so many people you meet there, they speak at least 2 or 3 languages. And for us, Spanish makes more sense.
Yeah. You're learning Spanish now.
I am. I've got my Spanish class tomorrow. I haven't done my homework.
She was a little upset at me because she's supposed to be doing her homework. So.
Well, and this is a professor who was head of the foreign languages department at Clark Atlanta University. His name is Dr. Earl Cowney. And he offers this course free of charge at Friendship Baptist Church. He's going to kill me. If more of you show up, and I don't know anything about it. Free of charge at 5 o'clock at Friendship Baptist Church on Thursdays. And we now, I haven't done my homework, but you know, we've got about a page and a half of an article on education in various Spanish-speaking countries in Spanish, and so we have to translate that into English.
Oh,
that's easier.
That's intense.
That's intense, but it's worse doing it the other way, trying to translate English into Spanish.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And once again, everybody, this is Sweet Auburn Stories. It's just a conversation. Thank you for coming. And we're going to take a picture before everyone gets out of here. Make sure you get some drink and everything. But thank you all so much for coming.